Hi, welcome back to the channel. This week we're looking at Kick 3. And I don't like to do too many product reviews in a row. I like to mix it up with tutorials and things like that. But it seems to be Kick season, and Kick 3 is obviously a big one that you're all interested in. So let's have a look at it. So here it is on screen in all its glory. I think the first thing to say is it looks great. It really does look a lot cleaner than Kick 2. And what you're seeing on screen now is my default preset. So on that one I've just loaded up basically a Psy or a Forest kick, which is one of my own. And in addition, I have snap and tags turned on. So tags is basically the visibility of the note and the frequency. So if you turn this off, they disappear. So I think you'd always want them on. And then snap is where it locks to a note range. So if I turn them off, you'll see now that it just moves without note visibility and on a hertz basis from one frequency to the next. So snap it to the frequency and turn the tags on so you know what you're doing. In addition to that, I have the linear mode turned on, which is my most favorite feature. So previously with the log mode, when we adjusted a point here, so I'm just going to adjust the pitch in the middle. On log mode, I'm adjusting it right in the middle of the curve, but it's actually adjusting it at this point here. And I'll say once again, I get why that's done, but it just broke my brain trying to design a kick drum without that alignment. So flicking linear on, you can see that this is the node we're adjusting, and that's exactly where it's going to change it. Or to make it more obvious, let's go to amp mode, and this node here I'm going to drag down, and exactly where that node is where the amplitude decreases or increases. So that by far is the number one feature for me. And below that we have the second most useful feature, which is the phase rotation. So we can change it from plus 180 degrees to minus 180 degrees. Let's put it back to 0. And to show that a bit better, and there's probably a better way to do this, but to keep it simple, I'm just going to drag in this basically blank text document. There's nothing in it, that's not the point. The point is basically to act as a ruler. Let's lock that on top. Now I'm going to drag this over. I think it's about there. It disappears for a bit. Let's put it there. So we can see that this cycle is right at the very top. But now with the phase rotation, we can flip that so it actually becomes negative. So watch as it goes around. That's at its maximum point, 180. And you can see it's exactly opposite. And same with minus 180. And I know that's obvious, but I think it's just easy to visualize when you have a straight line there. So let's put that back to 0. And obviously the reason for that is to phase align it with the bass. So essentially the phase alignment will no longer happen in the bass, it will happen in the kick. And then to close out the positive points that I like, let's just go to import. So let's drag one in. Once again, this is from my Psychic Vibrations Volume 2 pack. Let's do Analyze. And then once it's analyzed, it's split between the sub and the click layer. So let's drag them in. I have the click and the sub now in. Let's go back to main. And then we have the kick, like so. What I find that's typically doing that I don't like is especially in the click layer. So there is no reason why they should have all these artifacts towards the end in that, because, well, for a start, I didn't use any hats or any upper layer in the preparation of the kick, but I get maybe it's easy just to replicate the high end by taking a click of it, but there certainly shouldn't be anything towards the end. So to get it sounding better, I bring the amplitude right down, like so. Let's turn this all the way down. So that's now much better. So those three are basically the new features that I will use. And now anything that comes after this point is stuff I either don't quite understand or basically I just won't use. So first up we have the effects section. And I should point out that just because I'm not going to use the effects doesn't mean they're not useful. They're not really useful inside because we like to keep our kicks clean, but in techno or acid or any other form, then I totally get why these would be necessary. And the way it works is you have two inserts and then a main. So on insert 1, you flag whether you want which layer to go to that insert. So at the moment, I just have the sub layer going to this one. And let's just turn this on. And then on insert 2, we'll put that on the click layer. And just to mix it up a bit, let's choose one of the other ones. As you can see, there's quite a few. Let's just put this on clipper. Well, let's try another one. Drive maybe. In terms of the effects, you can see lots of distortion modes, a bit crusher, and then one I really don't understand, delay. I'm really not sure why you'd want a delay on your kick. or even if you're using it as an 808 bass, still don't know why you'd want delay. Reverb I get if you want like a techno rumble. To be honest, I'd probably do it outside of Kick 3, but it's there if you want. Multi-filter, and then EQ. I think the EQ is probably one of the most useful ones because then you can EQ each layer in addition to having the master EQ. And then once again, you've got the same effects on the master output, on the main output. Below that we have the EQ, we import function we've discussed, and then moving on to trigger, and this is one I really don't understand. I basically cannot think of a single reason why this would be useful. So essentially, it triggers the kick via a sidechain input. So if I was to give an example of that, I'm just going to add a sampler track, like so. Let's just duplicate this down, and I'm just going to take one kick, basically, like that. And then we'll get rid of all these. We'll move all these across to the side. So now playing back, there is nothing playing from kick 3. Then the sample I'm just going to drag on any kick, doesn't matter. So when I play this back, all you're hearing is the kick in the sampler. Let's now turn the level of this all the way down, so you're not hearing anything at all from that channel. Let's go back to kick 3, and then we're going to add that as a sidechain. Sampler track 1. So now you can see it coming into kick 3. Let's activate it. Now let's turn the threshold down. Let's turn this one down. And now you can hear every time the sample triggers, it's triggering the kick 3 kick. And as I said, I just don't get why you'd want that. Usually the kick is leading, so that should be triggering the sidechain of anything else. Maybe if you centered a drum loop, it would kind of replicate the kick from that drum loop. But to be honest, it would also be triggered by the snare, so I don't get why that's useful either. But if people smarter than me can give me suggestions on that, that would be most helpful. Then moving below that, we have the macro knobs, and I'm sure this is just user error, but I can't find a way to map them to anything. And then even if I did find a way to map them to anything, I'm not really sure why I would use them, because a kick in a mix to me isn't really something that you modulate or play with over time. It's fixed throughout the entire track. So the only reason I can think for this is maybe if you're using it once again for an 808 bass, that you'd want to maybe modulate some parameters like that. So I'm sure there's some people out there who find a use for it. Not really for me. And then settings, we have pan. For my use, I've got no need to pan any of the layers. Maybe if you wanted to pan 2 clicks left and right, that would be useful. But I'm just going to keep everything in the center. And then we have portamento, which is not going to be useful for a kick. But once again, 808 bass keeps on coming up, so that sounds pretty good on those, I believe. And then moving on to the left of that, we have the harmonic section. Now, in theory, this is quite a good feature, but it's one of those things I don't really think is implemented all that well. So we have the harmonics down here, so 8 harmonics, and we can increase them like so. You'll notice that when we increase them, you can see the visualization to the right changing, but nothing is happening in the waveform itself. And that's because we have the harmonics down at 0. So let's turn this up, and now you can hear the harmonics starting to come in. And obviously I still have my trigger mode on. Let's turn it off. Let's mute this kick, and then we'll drag in the MIDI that we had before. So it sounds good. Well, it sounds very good actually. But I said at the start, I don't think it's really implemented that well. And that is because when we click on the little cog here and we bring it up the view page, I'm unable to move this window. So I can adjust these like so, but I can't see what's happening in the actual waveform. And the gain's not really so much of an issue because I can do that on the previous window like you saw. But when I come down to ratio and decay, then I can't see what I'm doing on that. And it's just a simple thing. It just needs to be, this window just needs to be movable. So quite useful in theory, but I think it has a bit of a way to go before I can use it in practice. So what's my verdict then? I think for the type of music that I make, it is an okay update. I will use some of the features, but they're certainly not game changing. However, I will counter that by saying in any other form of electronic music, then I completely get why this would be a worthy update. You might have noticed that I've not compared this to any other kick synth out there, and that's because I'll leave it up to you to judge which one you prefer. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.